Joining me now is none other than the man himself, Dr. Eddie Glaude, Distinguished Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University. He is the author of several books. His latest, America, USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries, is already a bestseller, unsurprisingly, and there may be no better book to read and no better guest to have on this particular 4th of July. Professor, it is great to see you. Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. It's great to see you, and congratulations on the new show, my friend. I mean, I'm so excited to be with you on this day.
Thank you. It's an honor to have you here. Congratulations to you on the book. You open it with a very powerful and candid confession. You write, "No, I do not love America. I only wish that the country could be better, more decent and just. And in wishing that, I confess that I love deeply those who have borne and must bear the brunt of the country's madness. Even if most Americans don't see it, that love includes us all." So, Professor, for those who might read the first part as a rejection of America, and I have seen you challenged on this idea, explain what you mean. Explain when you say that love includes us all. Where does that come from?
Well, first of all, I want to reject the idolatry of the state. I don't think the way in which we grapple with the contradictions at the heart of the country is to retreat into the safety of a storybook version of America as if our virtue was secured in the beginning, that our innocence is always kind of present because of the divinely sanctioned nature of the experiment. I'm not interested in loving abstractions, Jacob. I'm interested in loving people close to the ground, the people you describe. Right. And oftentimes when people wrap themselves up in the flag, when they express their love of country as this abstraction, what comes in tow are these policies that are devastating to everyday ordinary folk. Juxtapose your opening segment, which was just beautifully put, with what Donald Trump said last night in front of Mount Rushmore. He said there's no American freedom without American culture. That's a dog whistle, Jacob. Right. He talked about American identity being bound up with American culture, as it were. And all of those are kind of dog whistles about blood and soil that we heard from J.D. Vance, that we've heard from Stephen Miller and the like. So when I invoke the notion of love, I am really invested in what makes the country special. And what makes America special, to my mind, are the people. We've just never been clear about who those people are. We've been fighting over that since the very founding of the country.
When I covered family separation, and then I wrote my first book about it, I made the subtitle Inside an American Tragedy, because family separation, I believe, will be seen as part of a long line of ignoble incidents in our history that are American as apple pie, whether it's slavery or genocide, or the internment of Japanese Americans, or the turning around of the St. Louis and sending Jews back to the Holocaust. And the list is much longer than we have time to talk about now. But I think people chafe at that suggestion. But the reality is that it is a part of our history as much as anything else. And that is what I love, Professor, about this message that you were sharing.
Yeah, we need to leave behind melodrama, Jacob, and actually understand the dramatic power of understanding the tragic nature of our past. To understand the ugliness of what the country has done is in a way, I think, of opening a door to release us into being otherwise. It allows us to grow up. When we tell ourselves this storybook version, how can I put it? We get stuck in adolescence. The country refuses to grow up, and so we elect an adolescent. We elect someone who refuses to be held to account, who can bomb the Strait of Hormuz and then tell the world, you need to fix it, who will lie with impunity. And so part of what I loved about your book, and particularly the subtitle, it foregrounded the tragic dimensions of our journey to now. And it seems to me, if we're going to grow up, we need to confront that ugliness, because it's the fullness of who we are. And coming from the tradition out of which I come, Jacob, that's the blues. And the blues is at the heart of this American experiment. If we really understand it, to my mind, it gives the country its swagger, its swing. And we need to understand that and embrace it.
One of the people that you interviewed for this book, Lonnie Bunch, is the man who runs the Smithsonian, now under just incredible, enormous pressure from this administration. And he told you that a nation afraid of its own history is a terrified nation. Why was that of such importance to you to include that in the book?
Well, I wanted to include it because here he is, a 72, 73-year-old black man, still bearing the brunt of the country's racism. And it's important, that comment was so important, Jacob, because I think it is clear that we're in this moment, a kind of second lost cause moment. The lost cause, of course, was that moment in which the country, through redemption, told itself a story where the North were corrupt carpetbaggers, and that these black folk who were former slaves could not bear the responsibility of citizenship. And that then justified decades of second-class citizenship status, not undone until 1954 and 1965. So I think it was important for Secretary Bunch to tell that story because we're in a moment that echoes in so many ways the ugliness of the 1920s. And, we think of the 1920s, Jacob, as the soaring, the roaring 20s, when in fact it was the decade of the Klan. It was a decade of immense and insidious nativism. It's the decade when the 220 to 25 million Europeans who came from Europe in the Great Atlantic Migration, they were seen as infestations. And what's ironic about the current day is that those Europeans, those Italians, those Irish, those Jews, who were once derided as polluting the American identity, right? They even appealed to, we want a Nordic America, 100% Americanism. Now their great-grandchildren have embraced, many of them have embraced the ugliness of the nativism that derided their great-grandparents. Baldwin put it this way, Jacob. He called it the price of the ticket, where Giorgio became Joe and Joe became white, and whiteness required, right, the denigration of other folks.
You write in the book that getting our babies to the other side of America's madness, that we want to get our babies to the other side of America's madness. We're both fathers. I, too, truly hope that we can do just that. Professor Eddie Glaude, Distinguished Professor of African American Studies at Princeton University and the author of America USA, How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries. I'm so grateful to you. Happy 4th of July again, Professor. Thanks for being here.
Happy 4th, Jacob.